Alright, so in this lesson, I'm just going to sketch a similar parallelogram with a scale factor of 3. So here's two parallelograms I have. Parallelogram A, and I want to sketch a similar parallelogram. Before I sketch this, there's two things I'm going to look for. One, I'm going to look for the base, and two, I'm going to look for the height. Well, the base is my bottom, so if I just count this, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I have 5 units there. And my height comes from the top, from this vertex down. That's my height, and I have 1, 2 units there. Alright, so my height, after applying a scale factor of 3, my new base is going to be times 3. My new height will be times 3. So my new base will be 15, and my new height will be 6. I'm going to start with my base. So I'm going to need a base of 15 units. So I'm going to start here. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 15 units. And then I'm going to create my height, which has to be 6 units. So I'm just going to draw myself an imaginary line here for a second. And my height's going to be 2, 4, 6 units up right there. So now the question becomes, where do I put my height? Alright, so that's going to be the tricky part here, where I actually put this height. So if I notice in this first diagram that I drew, I'm going to look at where my height is here. My height is at that vertex and coming down. Well, how many units do I have from the end point or the beginning of my base to that first piece where my height is, or that first unit where my height is? There's actually 1 unit there. So if I'm only moving 1 unit here to get to my height, then I should be moving not 1 unit here, because I'm applying a scale factor of 3, but 1 unit times 3. So 1, 2, 3. So my height should be on that line right there. And then use a height of 6. So 2, 4, 6. So now my parallelogram should start here. And then the same thing's going to happen here. So my base is going to be 15. And if you notice, I went 1, 2, 3 units and then up. I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to do 1, 2, 3 units. And that will ensure that I have the same angle in my first one and the same angle in my similar parallelogram. So I'm going to do one more example with a parallelogram. Here's parallelogram B. So my base, my height, I'm going to write those two down. My base right now is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And my height is 1, 2, 3. And in the first example, I used a scale factor of 3. I'm going to change this one up. I'm going to use a scale factor of, let's say, 1/2. Alright, so if I use a scale factor of 1/2 on this one, just to make it a little different, I'm going to multiply my first base by 1/2, and that's going to leave me with 2.5. And I'm going to multiply my height by 1/2, which will leave me with 1.5. So I'm working with half units here. Okay, so my base is only going to be 2.5 units. So if I draw my line here, my base, I'm going to start my base down here. So 1, 2, and a half units. That'll be my base. My height, okay, so be careful. My height here, how do I get from this first? So if you notice, the height here is starting at this corner here. So I'll move from my base here, my left-hand corner. I have 1, 2 units to get to my height. Well, I'm not going to use 2 units. I'm going to use 2 times 1/2, apply my scale factor there. So I'm only going to move 1 unit. So my height should be somewhere on that line. And what is the height? The height we said was 1.5. So I'm going to move 1.5, 1.5, and I'm going to put it right there. And I'm going to do the same thing here. And then draw my parallelogram. So 3 things to consider. 1, the base, the height, and where that line is. So if you want to draw that line for yourself right away, so that how far that height to the corner vertex, the distance, also needs to be multiplied by the same scale factor. Let's take a look at some triangles. So now I'm going to sketch a similar triangle with a scale factor of 2. Maybe I'll just do 1 or 2 examples here. So I'm going to look at those 3 things here. Again, I need to have a base, a height. My base is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. My height is 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm going to measure this space here, the space of where my height is. So if I were to just draw that, I'm going to draw that dotted line there for myself. So that's where my height is. So the space from the corner of my triangle, the first vertex of my triangle, to the height is actually 2 spaces. So I'm going to consider that as well. So when I make my new base, I'm going to do my new base, which is 5, and then 5 times 2, 10. My new height, which is 4, 4 times 2, which is 8. And then where do I place my, where does the height go? I'm going to just put a capital H here for that space. And if that's 2 units in, then the new height should be 4 units in. Alright, so I'm going to draw this triangle here. So 10. So I'm going to count 10 spaces. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. There's my base of my triangle. Where does that height go? Well, if it went 2 units in here, well now, since I'm using a scale factor of 4, it's going to go 4 units in here. So my height should be on that line somewhere. And how high is this height going? It's going 8 units. So 2, 4, 6, 8. So it should be there. And then that would be the easiest way to make sure that your angles will stay the same measure, keeping your 2 triangles similar.